Thank you for joining us for this episode of Inside Town Hall. I'm your host, Madeline Shields. Joining me this month is Christine Erickson. She's a city councilor, and her guest is Sean Pritchett, Director of Finance. Thanks for joining us. And what we are going to talk about is the 2020 proposed budget for the city of Sioux Falls. But first, I'd like to talk to Sean a little bit about, you're new to this position in the last year. Let's learn a little bit about you.
So came to the city in November of this year, and previously had worked in the private sector, primarily in the area of affordable housing. So worked with a affordable housing management company here in Sioux Falls, and prior to that I'd been in banking and also in the nonprofit sector. So had a real kind of diverse background in coming to the city, but it's been a great experience so far. Love working with, we have great staff, many of them who have been here a lot of years and provide a lot of consistency to the finance department. So just really enjoying our opportunity to work with the council and with the mayor's administration.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the budget. This is the time of year when we start talking about budgets, what we're looking forward to the next year. Let's just go into what is in the budget that's new and what would the council like to see?
So we just recently heard the mayor's budget, and we're in the process of budget hearings for the whole month of August. We dive into every single department and really just comb through it, looking at increases from year after year, some of the changes, why are those changes, and really as the council, this is our really busy time to look at where those tax dollars are being proposed to be spent. Does it make sense from hearing from our constituents? And really, we're the checks and balance for that budget. There's a lot of great things in the budget, but I know there's still a lot of questions as we go through that hearing process, just to get the clarity of, why are we including this or why are we cutting this? In this budget, you will see it's a really, really heavy budget on infrastructure. The citizens have spoke loud and clear to the administration and the council, and the proposed budget does have a substantial increase in infrastructure, and it's time. It's time to take care of those things that we already have instead of just expanding and growing, but really focus back on the basics of roads. It's really important. It's a basic thing of government, really, that and public safety. And so if we can utilize those dollars to make sure that our roads are safe and maintained and taking care of those things, that's important. And the council's in full support of that already. We've been really supportive of that direction. And so aside from that, we'll be diving into many of the other departments and looking at it with a fine-tooth comb.
Okay. Sean, what is your role in this? I know that you're the finance director. The city council gets the proposed budget from the mayor. How does this work? Do you work with the mayor to set up this budget and divvy everything out or break it down into departments? How does it work?
So there's a lot of different facets to it, and this is really the culmination when we get to presenting it to the city council of about 7 months worth of work to build up to this. So you can imagine, given the size of the budget, that it's a complex piece, and pulling it all together, it means working with the departments to determine what their needs are for that year, and then also working about what new initiatives could be incorporated into it. And then we also forecast what revenues we have for expectations for that year, and so that kind of gives us the framework from what we work within. But it started very early. The city council had work sessions in February of this year, I believe. And so we kind of launch off of that. We launch off of some of the internal discussions, and then we rolled out a new process to kind of consider new initiatives, working to engage the public as well as kind of engaging departments in considering other departments' budget priorities as well.
How is it that you determine what is the greatest need?
So a big piece of that was listening. So we listened to what the council kind of talked about in terms of what they're hearing for priorities. Certainly the mayor is constantly talking with the public about what he hears and what they see are the needs coming forward. But that's when we go back to the departments then, and they kind of know their operations, and then they start discussing, okay, here's where we need to be focusing our efforts. And they brought forward many different proposals, and then those proposals were actually considered interdepartmentally. So we had directors from all the departments kind of looking at all of the budget priorities and commenting and discussing as a way to really try to break down some of the silos between the departments, and it provided a lot of understanding about what the demands are and the needs are of the various departments throughout the city. So they gave their feedback, but then we also worked to engage the public, and where we decided to do is we worked with Leadership Sioux Falls. They have a graduating class that's kind of representative of our community, and we brought them in intensively over a couple of days and brought forward some of the proposals and asked for their feedback. And the responses we got back from them were very much reflective of what we were hearing from the public, what the council has been hearing from the public is, we appreciate the cultural and recreational amenities that we've invested in over the last several years, but the focus for this year needs to be roads, infrastructure, basic needs for the community. And that's where we kind of built up from there for the budget that ultimately was presented.
Is that what you're hearing from your constituents, or just people when you're out and about in Sioux Falls?
Yes, I would say the two big topics are public safety, of course, and then the infrastructure, roads. This last weather system that we had in 2019 and before has really just ruined so much of our roads, and hot, cold, rain. I mean, it just did a mess on the roads, and so it's time to really refocus back on those things. The majority of my emails from this last year were focused on roads. My car got hit a pothole, the curbs are crumbling, we need to reinvest in that infrastructure. And so that focus is so important. And every time we do a survey, we have a citizen survey that we do through the council in conjunction with the administration. Number one item every single year is roads. And so that is really important to focus on that, but we don't want to forget about everything else in the budget too. And so Director Cotter does an amazing job keeping that department running. And sometimes throwing too much money at a department, they can't keep up. So it has to be that balance of making sure all the needs are met in our community, but also making sure that we are being as prudent with those dollars as possible. So it's an exciting time. I think that the focus on public safety is huge too. We're adding a few new officers. Last year, a new drug task force position was added really to focus on that. So that's been in for a year now. And then adding additional officers. We've heard so many concerns recently with the additional crime and juvenile crime on the east side of town, but really all over Sioux Falls. Come those growing pains, come some additional challenges with public safety. And so adding a few extra officers on the street are important, and having that focus of narcotics and, making sure that the juveniles are behaving as best as possible, because most of those crimes that occurred did involve many juveniles, and so it's making sure that we have a good focus on that. One of the items that was not included in this budget that I hope we can focus on in the future is really a drug prevention program. It was cut several years ago, or 3 years ago, I believe, and it's something that just has not been put back in. We do it already on the PD, and there are components in the SRO officers that do components of that. But for me personally, at some point, I would really love to see a drug prevention program. It has to be evidence-based. It has to be very focused to making sure that it's going to do what it accomplishes, and not just say, hey, we're going to have a program at a middle school and hope people make good choices. So,
well, and I know from previous years that there's always been that struggle with, the just saying no to drugs. It works with the little kids, but kids grow up.
Right. And there's additional challenges now. I mean, we see such a huge drive on these Juuls and vaping. And, I have a freshman in high school going into high school, and some of the things he saw in middle school were mind-blowing to me, because it's just happening younger and younger. And so if we can somehow deter that and prevent instead of always treat. But we do a good job of that treatment in our adults as well, though.
Okay. What are, I know that you take different departments and you look at this. There are some charts and graphs. Are these available to the public to see?
Yes, so the 2020 budget is available to see online. So we've done kind of an executive summary of that budget. So That's more of a kind of a reading piece. So if you're not a numbers person, it's about kind of reading what the priorities for the city are and providing some clarity as to the why the funds are being spent in each of the departments. And that was something new that we created for this year. So you can find that executive summary of the budget as well as the main budget, which is all the numbers by department and by fund, both on the infrastructure capital side as well as operations. So if you go to the mayor's webpage or you go to the finance webpage, you'll see links to the 2020 budget.
And that's all at siouxfalls.org.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think it's worth even just piggybacking on what Director said is really that executive summary is new. That's never been done in the past. And it's just an effort to tell the story of the budget better. And so I appreciate their effort to try something different. And, for some of us that aren't numbers people and just to read charts, it gets a little bit overwhelming sometimes if you're not used to that. And so for different folks, this may be a good opportunity for you to read through a different department. There are some charts and some statistics in it, but it is an easy read for people to do that. So I'd encourage the public to go out and check that out. And if you have suggestions to make it better, let us know. I know this was the first time, and they're always looking at making sure that you're getting what you need out of that.
There is a graph with a dollar bill on it, which makes perfect sense to me, and it says adapt. Where are your taxes going? Can you talk a little bit about how do you break down the taxes in that budget? So how do you know how much a particular taxpayer is paying per each different department?
So I'll let Sean answer that, but I do want to focus on this dollar bill that was presented. When I was in the legislature, they did a focus like this, as well as where your tax dollars are going from the legislative side. And this was really, really helpful to know, here's the dollar, okay, we've got 35 cents for highway and streets, 25 cents for public and safety of every dollar, and then it goes and breaks it out. This really simplifies it, and I think it's really to understand. And so when I saw this chart, I thought, oh, bravo, this is an amazing piece for just general public to understand where your dollars are going instead of, throwing a big book at me saying, go read it and figure it out. This really simplifies it, so I'm appreciative of that, but I'll let you address.
And that's why I brought it up, because as a communications person, these charts, this makes perfect sense to me than graphs of numbers and Excel spreadsheets.
Right.
And so go to siouxfalls.org and look at this.
And in finance, we believe everybody loves the Excel spreadsheet. So, sometimes we get a little creative and we try to think differently.
That is not the case.
But as the counselor was saying, so in terms of where your taxes are going, the nice thing about the balance of our city government is that we have dedicated sources to different purposes within the government. So your first penny of your sales tax and your property taxes, they're really dedicated to the basic operations of government, day-to-day stuff, whether it's clearing the streets in the wintertime, sweeping the streets in the spring, filling your potholes, and just paying for general operations for the government. In general, that's your property taxes, that's your first penny sales taxes. Your second penny goes to pay for the big infrastructure projects. So when they're starting to reconstruct roads or they're replacing bridges and things of that nature, that's where that second penny is going. And then if you go use a restaurant or if you're going to a ticketed event and you get charged the third penny sales tax, it goes directly to entertainment venues, and that's the entertainment tax fund. And so those are the primary tax dollars that are coming in. That's what we're projecting and forecasting, and then that's where we build kind of what we're able to do in a given year from.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the positions that we're looking at. You did talk about public safety is one of the top priorities for citizens in Sioux Falls. Can we elaborate a little bit on that?
So there are 4 new positions, I believe, that are going into police, proposed going into police. And there's a really fine balance with that, because I've had a few people contact me and say, why not 8? And it's a balance of, they go to peer, you can only get in the training so many times. So you can't just add 15 officers on the street. And I don't know that that's responsible anyways of having that many new officers, but that question has come up. And so it is a balance of getting them in the right training classes. We qualify for some different grants from time to time. And so it's utilizing and matching those dollars. And so this is adding a couple of officers on the streets to really just rebalance that. In this budget also, I know the mayor did discuss having an off-site location where it would be a report to work because we're growing so much. So does it make sense to report to work and get your gear and whatever you need from a different location? And so that's something different that will be tried here in the near future as well. Just trying to be as efficient as possible, because it's not always efficient to start at the same place as our city continues to grow so much.
Right. Would it almost be like maybe a satellite?
I'm not sure exactly what he's calling it, but it's I believe a report to work station. Okay. And so I don't know where the proposed location is yet at this time, but that concept is newer and coming forth, and I don't know if it's a pilot or try it out, but certainly doesn't need a council approval for that. He can do that on the administrative side. But I think it's an exciting time to try to make sure that you're creating those efficiencies throughout, and not driving and going everywhere if you don't need to.
Sure. Well, and the city is growing, so people live way up on the north end and way south, and everyone to go into one location could probably be wasting time and resources.
Right. Yeah.
Let's right now we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our discussion on the proposed 2020 City of Sioux Falls budget. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Maurer from Falls Community Health, here today to talk to you about keeping your kids healthy and active. It is recommended kids get at least 60 minutes of physical activity every day. Other important guidelines are to limit screen time to a maximum of 2 hours and avoid sugary beverages. I encourage parents to be healthy role models for their kids by getting out and being active along with them. If you have any questions about nutrition or exercise, contact your physician or Falls Community Health.
Welcome back to Inside Town Hall, where we are talking about the 2020 proposed Sioux Falls City budget with City Councilor Christine Erickson, and her guest this time is Sean Pritchett. He's the Director of Finance, and he's the one who knows all about this proposed budget. Let's talk a little bit about what is the total of the budget.
So the total budget is about $545 million approximately, and that includes the operating side and it includes the capital side. So your general fund is most of your general operations, and that's about $170 million of that. As far as the enterprise funds, those are the self-funded portions that are service charges and fees that are associated with that. That's about $150 million of that total budget. So.
And there is a lot of good news in this budget as well. When you're talking about water rates and wastewater rates, let's talk a little bit about how the budget includes these items in there.
Yeah, so we as a council and administration have really had the priority to making sure that our water rates and sewer rates are as affordable as possible, while maintaining the infrastructure that we need. Because when you turn on your drinking water or need to take a shower, you expect it to be clean and you expect it to go away when you're finished. And so we're working together. We have made very minimal increases over the years versus if you sit still and do nothing 5 years, it's massive increases then to catch up. And so making sure that we're doing it in a modest approach, a little by little, is more responsible and is easier to absorb in your budget. And we really have the lowest rates around the region based on their research that they've done, making sure that we don't want to be the highest. But we want to be responsible in making sure that we're able to grow and maintain that. And you'll see that throughout the last couple of years, as well as moving forward, taking care of a great project that was just broke ground on here recently for the new wastewater facility.
When you're looking at putting this budget together, do you look regionally? Do you look at other cities our size and compare and see how are they doing their budget, and are we equal with them?
We do. We look at like cities similar to us and see what their priorities are for funding, as well as kind of how they're structured and how they present their budget to the public. One of the things we look at really closely is how we track our debt relative to other communities, and we look at it on a per capita basis so we can be real comparative. And if you looked at us compared to Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska, Madison, Wisconsin, Rochester, Minnesota, Fargo, North Dakota, we have by far the lowest per capita debt of any community, and that provides a balance to us that we're able to pay for many of our infrastructure improvements in cash because we're not having to service all of this debt service on top of it. So we've had that nice balance of using debt as needed to fund those long-term investments that are going to benefit people in the long run, not just current residents. And then we've been able to balance that with investing in roads and so forth that we need to timely invest in to make sure that our residents have great roads to be driving on. And so that's been a real focus in keeping that balance going forward.
And that really is, it's the long-range plan that's been in place for years. I mean, we don't just do this just on a whim. These long-range planning process has been in place for a very long time, and with Public Works and Finance and working together to making sure that the funding works with the project that needs to be done. These projects are planned for years and years out, and not just, hey, next year we're going to do this great big massive wastewater treatment facility. It's important to note that so the public knows that they're looking at water sources for the next 50 years, 75 years, making sure that we are competitive in that arena and making sure that we've got clean drinking water.
When you're doing the city's budget, obviously, I would think, the city is in Minnehaha County and Lincoln County. How does that cross over? Do you have to work with the county budget, or how does all of that work? And how do you consider what goes to the county as part of this, and what stays in the city as for fees and taxes?
So we have multiple partnerships with the counties, in particular Minnehaha County. So we work jointly on the libraries and the museums. And so they kind of take the lead on the museum side. We take the lead on the library side. And then they provide some funding to us for the libraries, and we provide some funding to them for the museums. So we do work in conjunction with one another in our budget process, so we know where we're kind of at on both of those pieces that we work together on. But the other main item is Metro Communications, and that's E911. That's making sure that when you pick up the phone and you have an emergency, that we're able to dispatch that public safety. We rely on it so heavily. The county relies on it very heavily. And that's an independent agency, but we jointly partner in funding that. I believe the city's about 75% of the contributions from the local governments, and they provide 25% of that contributions. And we're making a major investment in that this year. We're increasing our contribution by, I believe, $270,000 as proposed. And that is to make sure that they're able to add some positions and make sure we're keeping up with that ability to respond when those calls are coming in.
And it's also looking at their facility. I sit on the Metro board there, and their facility is, their work environment is tough. And these people are multitasking. They make just their ability, just watching them, sit by them and learn what they do of, taking a call. And it's amazing to know the skills that some of these folks have. But their work environment needs to be improved. And so I know that that's going to be a challenge in the near future too. And making sure that we have the appropriate backup station for them. If something were to happen to that location, E911 still needs to go on, and so where would they go? Which we have a location now, but making sure it's the right location and just kind of refreshing that area.
What else are we missing? What are some of the other highlights that we need to talk about that are in this budget? Anything new or anything that we haven't talked about previously that maybe came back for this 2020 budget?
One item I would just draw a little bit of attention to is workforce development is really important in this community. We have such a low unemployment rate, and so sometimes workforce development is a challenge and a struggle. And we've seen education change over years, that not everyone goes to a 4-year. I did, and I support that, but I also support those folks that want to get a certificate and get to work right away. And so last year, Councilor Kiley and myself brought forth an amendment to really focus on workforce development through STI. The administration saw that as a good investment, and that was put into the budget this time as a second year. And so you'll see a focus for workforce development and partnering with STI again this year. And so I was excited for that. It's always nice when it's in the budget and you don't have to try to amend it in.
Right. We do have a low unemployment rate. How is that affecting? Does that affect how you look at the budget? What do you spend to recruit people, either those college graduates to stay here, or to recruit them and get them to come here?
Well, we have affordable housing. I know some may disagree with me, but our cost of living here compared to other communities is low as well. And more and more you're seeing a drive for people to work remotely. Gone are the days that everyone goes to an office. Now that still happens the majority of the time, but there are a lot of people that work remotely and might travel to Chicago on a direct flight. I would love, and I know this is a huge challenge and I don't know how I can influence it, but I would love to see more direct flights from our airport. I think that would be a huge driving force for workforce development and also attracting people here. That if you had a direct flight to, say, San Francisco, all the tech jobs and jobs people could do here working remotely and get there quickly is huge. And I know one of a city out west just added that flight in, and so them getting that flight is huge. Not necessarily budget related, but I think that's a huge attracting force to those folks that do work remotely. And you don't have to go to an office every day. I think that's a attracting force of getting people here in this community and working.
So budget hearings are underway currently, and then you have to adopt the budget by when?
It has to be adopted by September 30th, or it goes into effect by October 1st. So the plan currently is, I think the second reading will be on September 24th or 17th, one of those two dates. And so that's still kind of being talked about. That's the kind of general plan, and that's when it needs to be. So we'd love to hear from people, either the mayor's office, the finance director, myself as a council. Reach out to us. Let us know what your priorities are. Look through the budget. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We really appreciate that feedback. We take it to heart, and you'll see things in the budget based on people's feedback.
Okay, well, great. And those budget hearings can be found on CityLink at siouxfalls.org. They will be live and they will be rebroadcast. So you can go online to siouxfalls.org. You can look at the budget, study it, and then watch the hearings as well. Please give your input to counselors, any of the counselors, but Christine Erickson is here. And thank you for joining us. We have Christine and Sean Pritchett, the Director of Finance. That's our time for Inside Town Hall. Thanks for watching.